Over to Kansas City, where Chiefs Geno might be ready to press the panic button, but maybe not so much. But when it comes to their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, he suffered a high ankle sprain on this play Sunday in that win against the Browns. The two-time MVP is considered week to week with that injury. You see them kind of wrapping it up. Did not come back in the game, but his status is up in the air for Saturday's game against the Texans. If he can't go, Carson Wentz will be your QB1. For more on this, our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, joining us here. And if you're Casey, JJ, you don't want to deal with this type of injury this time of year. The good thing, I guess, silver lining, he's had this before. But what's the latest you can tell us about Mahomes and that ankle?
Yes, they believe after tests on Sunday that it is a high ankle sprain. There are various grades to that high ankle sprain, and that is what will be determined today with further evaluation and tests. You note very appropriately that he has dealt with this before, that he has played through this before. But not exactly like this, right? There were the higher stakes of the playoffs. You remember in 2023 when he had that injury in the divisional round. They played on, I believe it was a Saturday, and then they were able to play on Sunday the following week against the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, there was 8 days between there, and he wasn't 100%, but he was able to beat the Bengals and then give it 2 weeks and then go beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. This time he doesn't get 8 days. He gets 6 days because they face the Houston Texans on Saturday, December 21st. And then they get that 4-day rest before facing the Pittsburgh Steelers at Pittsburgh on Christmas morning. And so, look, yes, they do have the #1 seed. They would lose the tiebreaker to the Buffalo Bills. How good or bad would Carson Wentz be? We frankly don't know in this offense. We really haven't seen him much at all outside of last night in meaningful snaps. And so, the question for the Chiefs is, of course, how much do you weigh, how much do you balance playing Patrick Mahomes, trying to retain the #1 overall seed, home field advantage throughout the playoffs? You would imagine they would rather, in an AFC Championship game, play the Buffalo Bills in Arrowhead versus going back to Orchard Park. And so ultimately it's going to come down to, can Patrick take care of himself? And two, do you trust Carson Wentz enough? But it goes in that order. I know a lot of people don't really anticipate that Patrick would be able to play this week. And then they sort of assume that because it's a short week after that, he would be out 2 games. I'm not willing to go that far, but it would seem right now more unlikely than likely that Mahomes can go this upcoming week.
We'll have to see what KC does. As you mentioned, 6 days of rest, different from the 8 that he's had in the past, dealing with that high ankle sprain. Over in Seattle, they don't have to worry about an ankle sprain, but Geno Smith left the game with a knee injury. Didn't look good. He was frustrated after that hit. What can you tell us about his status moving forward?
Yeah, it did not look good, right? And we're going to hear from the league later on this week if there's going to be a fine for the tackler there. You could see the pain. You could see the frustration and anger for Geno right there. Sam Howell came into the game right after that and played below NFL level, frankly. Took a lot of sacks. Now, let's also give appropriate, I don't know if credit is the word, but they were on a backup center as well against that Packers defense. We see the rest of the schedule right here for the Seahawks, who are fighting for their playoff lives now. That Vikings game is not going to be any fun, especially if it's Sam Howell going against defensive coordinator Brian Flores. The Bears, you know, we'll see which version of the Bears show up for that game. And then, of course, the Rams, who right now appear to be the best team in the NFC West. That is a game that I could imagine may get flexed to Sunday night to ultimately determine who's in and who is out of the playoffs coming from the NFC West. And let's also say there is an outside chance right now for the Seattle Seahawks to still get into the playoffs, losing the division, but you got to watch what the Commanders are doing right now. So this is going to be a very big week for Seattle. Certainly, they are a much better football team with Geno Smith than without him, and we saw that last night with Sam Howell.
As you mentioned, the Seahawks, of course, on the outside looking in, 8-6, a part of that team of the groups there in that hunt. So we'll see what happens out west. JJ, you know this better than anybody. The game has changed, and one change is the onside kick. You can't trick nobody nowadays. Entering week 15, we were 3 for 41 with 7.3 of those recovered. In other words, it's not good. Chances that they maybe boot the onside kick and say bye-bye?
Well, you know, it's a great question. And actually, I think that they want to bring the onside kick back. I think they want to resuscitate the onside kick and breathe life into it. But what is that going to look like? Look, about 6 years ago or so, there was a change in the rules. Remember, you could run up at the onside kick about 5 yards? Well, those 10 players, they have to stay stationary until the kicker kicks the ball, and that is what we have seen and lead to a decrease in recovery where depending on the year you're somewhere between 6 to 8 to 10%, but it's nowhere close to what we saw before the rule change where it was around 16, 18% in a given year. It is a dead play. It is a play where recovery is truly useless. That's what made Dan Campbell's decision with 12 minutes left in a 10-point game with 3 timeouts and 4 clock stoppages to go. That sort of mind-blowing, because you had a 3 in 41 chance this year of getting it. After this week, it's now 3 of 44. The NFL does not want to do away with the onside kick. They may even bring back what we have seen from, a decade ago. One thing that a lot of people, a lot of smart folks around football have wanted to see is a 4th and long alternative. Let's take Detroit, for example, and you get them in a 4th and 15, a 4th and 17, and Jared Goff has one throw to convert and keep possession. Well, the issue with that is the high number of defensive pass interference penalties that are called in the NFL today. So they don't want to see somebody just throw it up, the receiver work back through the corner, and then a flag's thrown, and there's your possession. That is too great a risk to go out there and do. So I do anticipate next year we see a new onside kick, and honestly, it might look just like the old onside kick.
Real quick, we got like a minute here, JJ. What have you heard from teams and those in the front office about the onside kick? They like it or they hate it? What have you been hearing?
Yeah, they want it to come back. That's the point of it, is that you do want to give someone the opportunity to repossess the football. But at 6.8%, which is what we are at standing here right now today, that's too low. It's just too much luck that is involved in order to get back possession. And so they want to see that creep back up into 10, into 15%. And I know they did away with the running start because of health and safety issues, but the fact is it's a 5-yard start with your opponent 10 yards away. There aren't that many samples, right? There's only about 60 onside kicks a season, so you don't really have the health and safety data. Even if you did, you don't know how meaningful it would be. So I do expect some changes to the onside kick this offseason. Trying
to play games with the football gods. We'll see what happens in the future. Jonathan Jones, as always, giving us everything we need from the NFL. Don't forget, we got more games. Monday Night Football, a doubleheader for you. Maybe not the one we all wanted. The Bears and Vikings at 8, but 30 minutes later, the Falcons and the Raiders. More Kirk Cousins out in Vegas.